You know the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? That's kind of how I was feeling before I picked up the new album from Sting. Do we really need new modern versions of his classic hits? Is My Songs as pointless as I expected it to be? My review is coming up next on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle, and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. Earlier this year, when Sting first announced that his 2019 album, My Songs, would be a collection of his solo and Police hits re-recorded with a more contemporary sound, I was highly skeptical. Maybe you saw my video on this announcement where I said that I thought that the whole thing was fairly pointless and possibly even worse, a cynical money grab. Of course, at the time, we only had a couple of the new recordings to hear as examples of where Sting was going with this, so it's not as if I could have reviewed the album as a whole. Still, many people thought I was a bit harsh with my early or perhaps premature disdain for this project. But I think I articulated fairly clearly why I thought it was, shall we say, a misstep. The rationale Sting shared about his choice to record this album, though, wasn't without merit. He had some interesting points to make. For example, he talked about how his voice has changed and matured over the years, making it a very different instrument than it was before. He wanted to explore that vocal sound further in revisiting these classic songs. And then the other point, which I actually found rather thought-provoking, was that when he first recorded all of these songs, it was as if they'd just met. His relationship with these songs had just begun. It was new and fresh. And now, over the years and decades even, that relationship has grown. He's gotten to know these songs, in a manner of speaking, and he feels as if they've grown too. So he wanted to revisit the music as a way to kind of show what that relationship has developed into. So I must admit, I get it. I can fully understand and appreciate where he's coming from here. And with that in mind, I wanted to truly hear the full arc of that evolution. To do that, I decided to create a playlist that matched up with all 15 of the tracks on the new My Songs album, but made up of all of the original versions. I did the same thing last year when Paul Simon re-recorded a collection of his songs for his In the Blue Light album. And as you might expect, in both cases, it felt really good to revisit all of that great music from the past. In fact, I highly recommend that you do the same thing with Sting songs. The thing is, though, when I set out to make my Sting playlist, the mere act of that reinforced my negative perception of the new album. And here's why. 13 of the 15 original songs had already been compiled for an album release back in 2002. The very best of Sting and the Police already contains everything from My Songs except the original versions of Demolition Man by the Police and Shape of My Heart by Sting solo. In their absence, though, that best of set has 5 other great tracks, arguably making it the definitive hits collection for Sting's musical career. As comprehensive as this best of album was, I couldn't help but feel, once again, that this new endeavor was all the more pointless. Still, I truly went into listening to My Songs with an open mind. I hoped that the album would perhaps hold some inspired reinterpretations or at least new versions that felt like they complemented the originals. Unfortunately, that is not at all the case. First of all, let's talk about what may be both the highlight and the low point on this album, and that's If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free. This was originally the very first song on the very first Sting solo album, so in many ways it represents Sting's bold emergence from an iconic band as an artist on his own. Of all the tracks on My Songs, none undergo as dramatic a reinvention as this, which, to be fair, is kind of what I want on this kind of effort. I don't want carbon copies of familiar hits. I want truly new interpretations. And boy, is that what we get here. Gone are the jazzy vibes that announced to the world that Sting was putting his punk days in the past back in 1985, and in their place are... Wait, is this disco? Look, I totally appreciate Sting taking a big risk with this song and going in such a wildly different direction. Ultimately, though, it simply doesn't work. Based on that failed experiment, you might think it was good news to hear that Sting keeps pretty close to the originals on the rest of the songs on this album. But actually, That level of fidelity is what confirms what I'd feared about My Songs, which is that it truly is an almost entirely pointless endeavor. Consider the rest of the Sting solo songs on this collection. Almost every one has seen its organic rhythm section stripped away and replaced with drum machines and programmed beats, often sounding like a dance remix. I mean, I guess Desert Rose was already like that, but now so is Brand New Day, a song that I was never terribly fond of in the first place, and I like it even less now. Even Sting's more intimate and thoughtful songs like Fields of Gold, Shape of My Heart, and Fragile are spoiled by this new electronic percussion. Also plagued by this problem is If I Ever Lose My Faith in You. Here, there is actually a faint hint at the direction that this song could have gone that would have been far more interesting. There's a background vocal callback to the lyrics sometimes that has a light gospel feel to it. That never turns into anything more than an echo though, which is a shame because it had me thinking how a gospel-infused take on this track could be really cool. And lyrically, the song feels more poignant than ever. Hearing him sing, "You could say I lost my belief in our politicians, they all seem like game show hosts to me." Whether you're living in the American chaos of the Trump presidency or the UK turmoil of Brexit, you could probably closely relate to those words. Yet nothing about this new version of the song does anything to live up to that potential. And speaking of the US versus UK dichotomy, I'm actually shocked by how Sting practically dumbs down his brilliant Englishman in New York in this new version. Yes, the electronic dance beat is offensively bad, but to add insult to injury, now there's sound effects too. One of the best moments in the original song was how during the bridge, Sting used a cacophony of percussion to represent the chaos of New York. We knew exactly what he was getting at. We could feel the stress and turmoil of the city in that musical metaphor. The addition of car horns in this new version all but spoils that effect and feels utterly cheap. Of course, almost half the tracks on My Songs were originally by The Police, so we also have that context to consider. The good news is none of those songs received the electro dance makeover that most of the solo songs were made to suffer from. And the truth of the matter is the Police songs are the ones here that most closely hew to their original arrangements, which again begs the question, what's the point? Before the album came out, Demolition Man was released as an advanced single, and in my other video I talked about how underwhelmed I was by it. Ironically, it ends up being one of the best songs on My Songs. Relative to the rest of the music here, that's really not saying much. I mean, I really like the burst of guitar noise at the beginning, which kicks it off with a very cool and menacing vibe, but ultimately the rest of the performance fails to rise to that level of intensity. Other than that, every other Police song here feels completely mechanical in its performance. Sting and his band are reverent to the originals to a fault, yet none of the songs have any of the sense of vibrancy or urgency of those classics. Every Breath You Take sees its eerie sense of obsession watered down to little more than a karaoke performance. Then on Message in a Bottle, the final verse gets a clap-along moment that might be fun live, but on the album feels utterly cringeworthy. But look, if Sting had wanted to take a chance with those Police songs and take them in a dramatically new direction, I'd have been cool with that. He did a ton of that kind of thing back on his first live album, Bring on the Night, all to excellent effect. But here, it's as if he went to his band and said, "You know what would make these old Police songs better? If they were played the same way, but without Andy Summers' guitar and Stuart Copeland's drums." Now, I really do like and respect Sting's longtime guitarist Dominic Miller, who is well known for voicing his distaste at having to play on some of Sting's country music detours. So I really wish that the guy had put his foot down here out of respect for Summers. To be fair though, the album is called My Songs, and that is an accurate title. Whether they're solo tracks or Police hits, Sting is the sole songwriter on almost every track. So, to that end, he can certainly do whatever he wants with them. Supposedly, what he wanted was to make them sound more contemporary. But to my ear, those updates range from being nearly inconsequential to being eye-rollingly bad. And again, the most egregious thing about this whole exercise may be the overwhelming abundance of electronic instruments and programming. Sting is well known for surrounding himself with outstanding musicians, true artists and masters of their craft. The loss of that kind of Organic musicianship on this album is truly a crime. Speaking of musicianship though, I should mention the live tracks that supplement this album. The standard version closes with a very straightforward live version of Roxanne, while the deluxe edition adds 4 more similarly reverent live tracks. While I'm disappointed Sting doesn't do any reinvention here either, which he's usually well known for in concert, there's some good value here. On the deluxe edition, the performances of Synchronicity 2, Next to You, and Spirits in the Material World mark their first appearance on any Sting live album. For some fans, myself included, that may be the only selling point for this album. Because let's be realistic here, these are all great songs, no doubt about it. But there's nothing in any of these new performances that brings anything complimentary to the legacy of these songs. None come anywhere close to improving on the originals or even innovating with them. There's no tangible reason for this album to exist in any fan's collection beyond the inclusion of the new live tracks. Between Sting and the Police, I now count 32 discs of music in my collection, and I'm fairly confident that this quote-unquote new album will be the one I revisit the least. Its only saving grace is the strength of the songs themselves rather than the actual performances, which is why I'm giving My Songs by Sting an X rating of 3 out of 10. The album is every bit as pointless as I feared. Die-hard fans will want the deluxe edition for the live songs alone. All others should buy the aforementioned hits album, The Very Best of Sting and the Police, which includes the original versions of almost every song on this album plus more. Why would you want anything else? The answer? You don't. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Plus, check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to click subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.